Before we begin this episode, I just want to add a disclaimer. We're going to talk about feeling trapped. And when I talk about this, I'm referring to situations where there is not an imminent danger to your health and safety. If you are in a dangerous, physically abusive situation and you're listening to this right now, please reach out to a trusted friend or an agency immediately and get the help and the support that you need. Well, hello there. Welcome back to the Redefining Bold podcast, where we're stepping out and stepping up to refine our lives by taking small steps towards positive, lasting change. I'm your host, Gwen Whitfield, and you're listening to episode number 42. Today, I want to talk to anyone out there that is feeling trapped. If you've ever felt trapped in a situation, trapped in a job or a relationship or an organization, even when you feel like you have nothing you can do about it, this episode is for you. There have been times in my life where I have felt incredibly trapped, and that's what I would tell myself. There have been moments in my life, whether it was personally or professionally, where it was like I was walking just this very slow walk towards death, where my soul was being sucked dry, where I felt like things were never going to get better and there was nothing I could do about them. I felt like there was no way out, no way forward, no way of getting better, things to get better. And that is a very desperate place to be. I've seriously been at times to the point of despair. And when you feel that you're in that place, it's not good. And when you're in a situation where the only word you can use to describe yourself is trapped, then you're putting yourself in a literal box and believing a lie that is so detrimental to your mental health and perhaps to your physical health. Throughout my life, when I have been under incredible stress, it has had a direct impact on my physical health, and that makes everything else that much more overwhelming and frustrating. Feeling stuck somewhere, honestly, I'm not really sure that there is much of a worse feeling than that. And when we continually tell ourselves that we're stuck or that we're trapped, we're feeding into this state of despair. And so when I learned that I could change what I was telling myself about a situation, I realized that in reality, I was not trapped. I wasn't stuck. I was only trapping myself by telling myself that I was trapped. Because the truth is, no matter what's going on, no matter where you are, no matter what the situation is, there is always another option. Even if that option is just to walk away. Something that I would never do, it's still an option. Like in the stress of parenting, when your kids are little and they're crying and you can't sleep, those sleepless nights, the fatigue, the stress of the busy schedule. It is very easy to get overwhelmed and feel stuck. But I could always just get up and leave. That is actually an option. It's something you might say that's not an option. No, that's never an option. But it actually is an option. And so by realizing that it is an option, I realize that I'm choosing to stick it out. I'm choosing to move through the difficult times. I'm choosing to stay and be there for my kids and my family because I love them and because it's the right thing to do. And immediately I feel better. Immediately I know I am not actually trapped. The same goes with financial challenges. There is always the option to just set the keys on the counter and walk out the door. Drastic, sure, but it is an option. When we found ourselves in some financial difficulties a few years ago, we obviously chose not to take that option because we were able to sell our house and just start over. But leaving the keys on the counter and walking out, that was an option. One that might have come with some consequences that we didn't like. So there's obviously, some impetus not to take that option too. And even though these very extreme options sound like they're not options, they actually are. When you acknowledge that there is another option, it brings immediate relief because you now realize that you are actually doing something positive by being where you are and taking the road that you're taking. So what if you're stuck in a job that you feel like is a dead end? Or you're working with toxic people in a toxic environment, but you've got bills to pay, you've got a family to support. What do you do? Well, first, you do have an option. You have an option to write up that resignation letter and go take it to your boss and walk out and never look back. You might stop and say, hey, Gwen, that is not an option. I've got a family to support. I have a mortgage. I have bills. I have responsibilities. But when you realize it is actually an option, walking out of that toxic situation is an option, and you're choosing to stay for the sake of those you love, it will immediately give you some sense of relief and a feeling of control that you thought you didn't have. So what's the point of this? Because you're here in this situation that's not healthy for you or is not supporting your long-term goals and dreams. The point is when you realize that you have an option, at least one option that you're choosing not to take, it frees up some of that mental load you're carrying so that you can begin to think of another solution. When you have one option, it helps you understand that there are probably more options that you might not be considering. The point of this is just to feel better, to get some relief, because when you're in this desperate, trapped feeling, there's no room for inspiration. But when you can create some space to find some relief, it opens up that room for inspiration to flow in, for you to think of new ideas, new scenarios, better options. Because when you're in the midst of the feeling of despair, that is actually the absence of hope. And when you can move to a place from despair, then you're allowing room for hope to grow. Where there is hope, despair cannot exist. Hope and despair can never coexist. So today, if you're feeling trapped, if you've been telling yourself that you're trapped, think of the thing that keeps you there. Think of your loyalty, your values, maybe your stick-to-itiveness, and think about yourself. Think to yourself, I could leave. I could put the keys on the counter and walk out. I could turn in my resignation letter and leave. I could do these things, but I'm actively choosing not to. And see how that makes you feel. Because when we know we have choices and we make those choices consciously, we realize that we do have some control over where we are and what we are going through. Knowing that there are options, even one, even if it's the one you would never ever take, that is the first step towards taking ownership of where you are and taking steps toward the life that you want. Knowing you have options creates space in your heart and in your mind. You can move from feeling at the mercy of life to being the creator of your present and your future. It has done wonders for me, and I know it can for you too. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Or you can go over and find me on the gram, and let's keep this conversation going.